My 12-year-old sister got pregnant that day. The baby she had was called Marjorie. In 1968, she was adopted by our mother, who instantly paraded around town saying she didn't care who knew what happened now because the baby was legally hers anyway. She told everyone, including the principal of our school.
So your mother adopted her daughter's own baby
Child
as her
from
own.
Ellie Hickman. Raised her as her own as Marjorie Pryor. Now Marjorie is married to a man, Anstey, and she works for Hickman Motors as a service writer in Hickman's Garages, a General Motors dealership.
And Hickman Motors is owned by.
Hickman's family business, one of their businesses here on the island. I have a website on the internet, maxpages.com/sexual abuse, where I list what happened to our family, plus one page is almost, as many assets as a layman could put for the Hickman family on the island. They own everything from Canadian Tire franchises to General Motors to building supplies. Everything that you can put investments in, they own on this island. Since then, I continued to report what happened. I was 14 and 67. My uncle from St. John's, who grew up with Alec Hickman and a businessman here and friend of Alec, knew what I was doing. Someone told him that I'd reported what happened to the police. He came to Grand Bank in a Jeep Cherokee. He said it was the first one that Cook and Jones Motors sold, towing his speedboat behind, put it in the harbor, and I was always hanging out on the wharf waiting for my dad to come home. He asked me if I wanted to go for a ride, so I said yeah. So he took me out in his boat and just stopped by the buoy outside the harbor, tied the boat on, and just instantly turned to a crazy man, grabbed me, put me over the side of the boat, held me in the water by my shoulders and said, "If you ever try to make trouble for me and my friends again, I will drown you personally." Said, "I don't ever want to hear another word about what happened in your house or to your family. And if you ever go to the police again, I will personally drown you." He pulled me back in the boat, started the boat up and drove to Fortune. And his friend, Levi Crocker, was standing on the wharf. Back then, all the fish plants would put their gurry and offal pumped into the harbor. There would be a scum all over the harbor of brown, gook, and this speedboat had 265 motors on it. It was really fast and built from marine plywood because he'd explained everything to his friend in Fortune, Levi Crocker, as I listened. He came in the harbor, turned the boat around real quick, so the back end dove down, and when it did, all the gurry and all the water came over me and covered me. My hair, my head, my clothes, I was covered. Actually, I don't know if it was just because he was mad at me or to cover up the fact that I was already wet when I pulled in the harbor. But he stopped talking to his friend and explained about his boat. Then he left, and we came back down 4 miles down the coast to Grand Bank. And he said, "Now you get out of this boat and go home, and I don't want to hear another word about this." So that day I decided that he was going to hear lots more about this because I'd never give up what I'm doing. I reported formally to the RCMP themselves 9 different times, just me alone. 3 of my sisters have made reports to the RCMP. My brother Alan has reported to the RCMP. We've reported to our family, clergymen, social services, and no one in a town of 2,500 did anything but tell their children to stay away from us because we were trouble. Since then, I've been abused and persecuted by our legal system for telling the truth. In 2005, a politician named Bill Matthews and an ex-school teacher charged me in January with defamatory libel. Bill Matthews, the provincial government, Mr. Danny Williams as premier, and his lawyers, and the Chief Justice Derek Green kept me going to the courtroom the entire year of 2005, doing nothing, and they put my case and my file, this file, more than 300 pages, in a closed locker, froze the file, and the judge ordered that no one would have access to my legal file without his permission. It would have to be a lawyer, and no copies were to be made. They said they would probably get back to me, Stephen May, a lawyer for Bill Matthews, by May of 2006. I'd already written everyone from prime ministers to popes to the president to the United Nations to the International Court in The Hague. Logan's Pony Club from Hamilton, Ontario, and their representative, Mr. Whittle, wrote to the Governor General, Adrian Clarkson, on my behalf, because Ellie Kickman is also a member of the Order of Canada. Mrs. Clarkson said, or her office said, that this would be added to the file and they would make sure that it was dealt with. Years had passed, nothing happened.
When was that that happened with Adrian Clarkson?
2005. In 2004, Mr. McKay wrote me back, Peter McKay. Mr. Harper wrote me back. Other MPs wrote me back saying they were sorry what happened. If they were elected, they would make sure this never happened to anyone ever again. So after all of this in court of 2005, and these people got elected, I said to my wife in 2006, it's time for me to go to Ottawa. And she said, well, if you want to, how are you going to do it? And I said, well, I got a credit card. She said, okay. So I used my credit card to get myself to Ottawa. I lived on it there for 7 months from April until October. I've got just about $20,000 credit bill. I stood in front of Parliament Hill with a permit for each month that I was there, from dignitaries throughout Ottawa, from politicians to senators to the RCMP. They approved my signs, they approved my handouts, and gave me permits for 7 months. Actually 8 months, but I didn't use the November one. I got kidney stones, had to come home. I gave out 12,000 information handouts. My MP, Norman Doyle, in April, took this more than 300 pages personally and delivered it to Mr. Vic Tays, who was the Justice Minister then, in Mr. Vic Tays' office. Mr. Doyle came, talked to me at the fountain in front of Parliament Hill. He left and said, I'm going to bring this over myself, Byron. I'll come back and let you know what happened. I thanked Mr. Doyle for helping me. He came back and said it's on Vic Tays' desk, and he's appointing lawyers to look into it.